Greetings. Welcome to Promoting Literacy Success with the Michigan Alliance for Families. My name is Noel Kelty, and I'm excited to have this session with you today to talk about literacy development for families. Families are so important in the process of literacy development, and I hope in today's session you can identify a few strategies or resources to help you in your family's literacy journey. You will hear about me a little bit more in a few slides. I'm excited to jump into it with you. Did you know that family engagement in a child's literacy learning positively and significantly impacts school performance? The role that you have in supporting literacy development starting at birth is so important. And oftentimes, what we're doing with our children to support literacy development is exactly what our intuition tells us is right. Talking, reading, singing, playing with your children every day is so important. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with knowledge and skills in promoting those literacy skills and maybe help you put a name to some of the really great practices you're already doing as a parent. So we have a few outcomes for today's webinar. We'll discuss the benefits of partnering with the school to support literacy learning. We will identify key principles in supporting literacy learning, learn about the research and strategies to support literacy learning, and identify resources to support families in their child's literacy success. So make sure you have your handy dandy pen and paper ready. I'll have some resources to share with you, particularly toward the end of this session. So these are the components of today's presentation. I'll do a little introduction of myself so you know who I am. Then we'll talk about why literacy is important, the essential components of literacy, how families can support that, really thinking about how families and schools can partner together to collaboratively support literacy outcomes, and I'll share a few resources with you. So about me, I have a few hats that I wear. Through the opportunity to present with you has come through the Michigan's MTSS Technical Assistance Center. I am the topic coordinator for family partnerships, so I support training and support for programs in schools centered on family partnerships in all areas. I have experience as a college professor, a consultant, a teacher, a home visitor, early interventionist, and administrator. I also have two children who have quickly grown, so they're in their early 20s now. And a lot of what we're talking about today are some of the trials and tribulations I also had as a parent. So I think it's important that we always know that when we're talking the talk, we have to walk the walk as well. Why is literacy important? Here's some things that we know about early literacy. We know, this is a quote from the American Library Association, early literacy, which is reading and writing, we have to remember the components of literacy, does not mean early reading instruction or teaching babies to read. It is a natural development of skills through the enjoyment of books, the importance of positive interactions between children and parents, and the critical role of literacy-rich experiences. We also know that literacy-rich experiences does include intentional teaching of skills. So in everyday activities that you do with your children, you're offering rich language, you're introducing new vocabulary, you're talking about what you're seeing in the environment. Your children are connecting environmental print to when you're driving in the car, what does that big M mean? You know, kind of what does the stop sign say? So we're always connecting kind of a joy for literacy, reading and writing with kind of those intentional teaching of skills. One study that is pretty remarkable that helps us understand our roles as family members in supporting early literacy experiences This was a very large study published by the American Library Association of 3 to 5-year-old children who had been read to at least 3 times a week, found that children were 2 times more likely to recognize letters in the alphabet, 2 times more likely to have sight word recognition, and 2 times more likely to understand words in context. And these are outcomes just from having children being read to at least 3 times a week. We know that sharing thoughts, ideas, and emotions is key to the human experience. Developing literacy skills facilitates effective communication. So over a lifetime, we're going to talk a little bit about that, the continuum of literacy development. Children hone their skills to read, write, speak, listen, think, and respond critically. These are skills that unlock the world's secrets and provide unlimited possibility. Literacy matters because of the endless doors it opens. And many of you may be thinking about your own literacy journey right now. And that's a story that I will often tell, is if I think my own literacy journey, being a reader, a voracious reader starting at an early age and having that fostered within my own family, had a lot to do with where I ended up career-wise, a selection of career, education, etc. I think it was that more than having any kind of resources or funding. It was more like that internal drive to become a reader, and then an internal drive as a reader to learn all I could. So I welcome you to take a moment to think about your own literacy journey. What are those impacts that you have had in your own life leading up to this point that have helped you embrace literacy, become a reader, maybe not become a reader, identify a writer, identifying those things that have really made an impact for good or bad in your own literacy development. So here are some Michigan facts. This was published in the Detroit News. Also, you can see a citation from the National Center for Education Statistics. This is kind of an overview of the NAEP results, it's a national assessment that identifies achievement level at various ages and grades. And we do have NAEP schools within Michigan as well as federally, not all of them, but this is something that can kind of give you an idea of where we are in Michigan. 52% of Michigan's third grade students, when we're taking a look at these data, 52% had a reading deficiency between first and third grade. So we know that we're really truly addressing a literacy crisis in Michigan and really working to identify and approach the literacy concerns that we have within the state, I think in a united and collaborative way. And parents are right there at the front line. Families and caregivers are right there at the front line. What are those activities and strategies we can do both in partnering with programs in schools and on our own to really support high quality literacy activities with the children that we love. So let's talk for a few moments about the essential literacy components. So we're going to talk a little bit. First we talked about why literacy is important. Now we're going to move into what are those essential literacy components. So generally speaking, there's 5 components of early literacy. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one today. One is oral language, and oral language includes vocabulary, which we'll talk about. Phonological awareness includes phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and comprehension. So here what you see is what's called the simple view of reading. So we're just going to talk for a few minutes about what's actually going on in the brain when a child is learning to read. So we see here word recognition in blue multiplied by language comprehension in the green equals reading comprehension. You see that multiplication sign there means that at no point in the developmental learning progression would instruction focus exclusively on only one or of the 2 parts. Like we need to have word recognition, and language comprehension to have reading comprehension. While one side may have more emphasis at certain stages of development than the other side, good instruction must effectively integrate the word recognition components and language comprehension components, as opposed to selecting to teach one over the other. So in the next couple slides, you will see that while this view of reading is pretty simple, the underlying processes reflected in this view are really quite complex. Power of the simple view of reading comes in its practical application to the classroom in ensuring that instruction from preschool through high school appropriately balances instruction in language comprehension and word recognition. So this simple view of reading that I'm providing the overview of serves as a theoretical foundation for building a learning progression for developing skilled readers that is anchored to evidence-based reading research. The learning progression is designed to develop novice readers or beginning readers into skilled readers from pre-kindergarten to the 12th grade. So what you see on this slide is an outline of this learning progression, which includes a hierarchy of skills to teach the word recognition, or otherwise known as decoding, and language comprehension components necessary for skilled comprehension of a written text. So each of the component skills for word recognition and language comprehension are represented by a shaded bar that you see on the slide in front of you. And you can see those shaded bars within specific age bands. Each bar represents an evidence-based estimate for when typical readers master these skills. Some of the component skills include a thin line spanning through 12th grade, which represents ongoing refinement and generalization of the skills. There's a few notes that I want to add when interpreting the learning progression. First, it's important to note that each of the component skills listed within shaded bars can and should be further defined and talked about, which we're going to be doing. It's also important to note students who would benefit from small groups or individualized intensive instruction, like to learn how to read, likely will require formal instructions in skills below their current grade level placement. So when we're talking about small group instruction, we're talking about fostering opportunities for children to kind of meet children where they are at developmentally in an individualized or small group context to work to get them up to these age expected skills. So here you can see the development of print concepts, phonological awareness, basic and advanced decoding, and fluency. And see here, pre-K to first grade, we're really working on those print concepts and phonological awareness. And then you start seeing more decoding that has a wider age span and may not start as early as some people may believe they start. So really thinking about what is developmentally appropriate expectations for the word recognition, learning progressions, et cetera, is really important. So when we're talking about print concepts, children with strong awareness of print, they can recognize letters and words in their environment, and they can understand that letters and words carry meaning and can be used in different ways. So we'll start seeing children who kind of play word games, see a word that they may recognize and start making connections between that word and other words that may carry meaning for them. So what are some ways that families can encourage print concepts? Some ways, teaching children to write their name. That's something we all start doing pretty early on. So practice using a capital letter and lowercase for the rest of the letters. Write the word for them and let children trace it, copy it, make it from Play-Doh, drawing it in the sand, having multiple ways to practice writing a name. Pointing out words and letters when reading together. So there's a letter M. It says, for mommy. Can you see the S that says S for Sam? And then encouraging children to find the letters in their name or the names of family members. And while you're book reading, while you're looking at signs, while you're driving down the road, can you find an S for Sam? So identifying ways to encourage print concepts, especially within our environment, is really meaningful. So being able to hear or isolate sounds gives children a foundation for learning to manipulate the sounds of sentences and words as they learn to read and spell. So first of all, phonemic awareness performance is a strong predictor of long-term reading and spelling success. So students with strong phonological awareness are likely to become good readers, but students with weak phonological skills will be more likely to become poor readers. It is estimated that the vast majority, more than 90% of students with significant reading problems, have a core deficiency in their ability to process phonological information. In fact, phonemic awareness performance can predict literacy performance more accurately than variables like intelligence, vocabulary knowledge, and socioeconomic status. So the good news is that phonological awareness is one of the few factors that teachers are able to influence and families are able to influence through instruction, unlike intelligence, vocabulary, and socioeconomic status. So this is a very powerful predictor of literacy and something that we can take the most action on as families and educators. So what are some ways that families can encourage phonological awareness? Read alouds, read alouds, read aloud. So read aloud books or poems with rhyming words at the ends of lines or sentences, inviting children to join in and predict the next rhyming word. So Dr. Seuss books are great for that. So just those books that have the rhyming text and super predictable rhyming text is great too. You can also listen for it and clap with syllables for familiar and new words. For example, jumping, water, happiness, or fabulous. You can sing songs, say nursery rhymes, chants, riddles, silly poems, tongue twisters, and jokes. There's several of us that, especially in the early care and education space, where we're always saying, we're kind of losing our nursery rhymes. We're not seeing as much of those in early care and education programs. And that value of learning nursery rhymes and then extending that value to the home. So if we're learning Ba Ba Black Sheep at school and at home, we're able to talk about the rhyme in there. There's some alliteration in there. So we can make those connections between songs and rhymes that we're doing between home and school, and really, and that is a good social emotional connection between home and school too, side note. So with phonics specifically are the relationship between the letters or letter combinations in written language and the individual sounds spoken in language. So when we're doing phonics instruction, we're teaching students how to use these relationships to read and spell words. Phonics instruction enhances children's success in learning to read. So families can help with phonics instruction in lots of ways at home. You can model how to say all the sounds in the word, stretching and connecting sounds together as much as possible. Have your child sound out the word with you, repeat the word, and ask the child if the word makes sense. So you're not just saying the word and then moving on. You're providing the word, and then you're providing opportunities to stretch and practice that word. So I like to do I do, we do, you do. So maybe we'll have a new word. I'm going to go with fabulous since I just did that one a few minutes ago. Maybe we have a word like fabulous, and maybe I'm clapping out the sounds in the word fabulous. Now I'm going to model fabulous. all the sounds in that word, stretching and connecting the sounds. Now let's say it together. Fabulous. Now can you say the word? Fabulous. And we did a fabulous job in practicing that word together. So let's do some practice here with the word man. So you may say to your child, you're looking at the word man in a book and you're saying, how does this word start? And your child knows the sound for man. So what is the next sound? And then what sound comes next? Man. And what happens when we blend all the sounds together? Man, and the word is man. So playing with the sounds and words and really intentionally making those connections is super powerful. So fluency is another component. Fluency is the ability to read as well as speak and to make sense of the text without having to stop and decode each word. So you see fluency when a child's just reading along. They're not stopping over and over. They don't have to stop and sound out each word. Fluency is pretty powerful. It has a positive impact on word recognition, reading fluency, and comprehension. And really, fluency makes oral reading more fun and lively. It allows the author's message to be communicated clearly. It also gives readers confidence in their own ability as readers and really helps them enjoy reading. Reading is a lot more fun when you don't have to struggle with each word. So we work on fluency quite a bit as another component of this. And there are a lot of ways that you can foster fluency as a family member. Number one, I always say, is read and reread those favorite books. I'm sure many of you are fondly thinking of that favorite book that your child had to read night after night after night after night after night. I can think of the book right now. So reading and rereading those favorite books, it becomes more of a partnership with their child the more they become familiar with the books, and it's a way to really foster that fluency. Reading aloud with emotion, making the book interesting and engaging, inventing sounds when reading. In fact, the one book I'm thinking of right now that I read probably 3 or 4 times a day for about a year had a lot of sounds to invent in it. And I think that is one of the reasons my son loved that book so much. Using different voices to indicate the characters and narrator. So again, we're practicing that intonation. We're making it fun. We're making play out of reading, all while we're fostering fluency. Changing your volume, tone, and pace as you read different parts of the book. Audiobooks being read together, maybe especially even in the car, could be a lot of fun. And if you may have fun, your child will too. So make it a fun and engaging experience. So thinking about oral language, how does oral language contribute to reading success? Oral language is that foundation that we're looking for. So oral language is starting prenatally. If young children experience rich oral language by talking with and listening to adults and other children, they will have a large bank of spoken vocabulary, which are all the words they understand when used in spoken communication. Children will have heard and joined in wordplay and rhyming, and they'll be aware of the sounds of English. They will be familiar with lots of different sentence types and understand how language can change in different situations. And they will understand that words have meaning and that we use language to communicate information, ideas, feelings, and thoughts. So when we're fostering that oral language, we're fostering really whole child development. So we know that oral language is the foundation of all literacy skills. So having that large bank of spoken vocabulary and words is super important. And when we foster the wordplay and the rhyming and all the fun activities that we're talking about, we're really fostering that oral language development. So there's a lot that we can do at home to foster oral language development. You can provide different opportunities for children to listen and talk for different purposes. So you can talk to your child and listen responsively. Asking and answering questions in that. Open-ended questions are super valuable. So what color is that is an example of a closed-ended question. So what color is that? Is it raining? Is the book over? You know, those are closed-ended questions that have a set answer. Open-ended questions are often the question. So why do you think that happened? What do you think is going to happen next? Where do you think the rabbit went in the story? What do you think? Asking those open-ended questions will really foster that thinking about thinking, and also gives children an opportunity to engage in those open-ended oral language opportunities. Read to your child at least once a day. Good books expose children to vocabulary and sentence structures they wouldn't hear in everyday situations. Research has shown that reading aloud to children is a major factor in their success in learning to read at school. There's a direct correlation between success in learning to read at school and being read to by their families. And talk to your child about the books that you read together. Ask your child about the characters, the plot, the setting, the themes and ideas raised by the book, topics that they'd like to read or learn more about. So if you've read a book about trains and now your child is asking all the questions about trains, what a great opportunity to go to the library and find some really engaging books about trains. You're jumping on your child's interest. You're fostering all the components of language and literacy development, which is so important. So vocabulary is next. I think we've mentioned vocabulary once or twice already in this session. We know that the larger a child's vocabulary is, the easier it is to make sense of text. And that makes sense, right? The more information that we have about anything, the easier it is to make sense of that thing. So vocabulary knowledge is knowledge. The more vocabulary knowledge we have, the more general knowledge we have. The knowledge of a word not only implies a definition, but how that word fits into the world. Vocabulary also supports reading development and increases comprehension. So again, several ways that families can support vocabulary development. I'll say it again, read aloud every single day. Thinking about becoming word aware as you read aloud. So while reading with your children, comment on words that you know are new to your child. What do they sound like? What do they mean? What do they remind you of? The one thing I always recommend, both for educators and families, is before you read a book to your child, read it yourself. And when you read through the book yourself, you may identify a small handful of words that may be unfamiliar to your child. So you know to anticipate that. When you get to that word with your child, you can think, okay, this might be a word my child doesn't know. What are some strategies that I can use to connect my child with that unfamiliar word? Get your child to be a word detective when out and about. Maybe you'll find new and interesting words throughout your environment. You can talk together about what they might mean or research what they might mean together. And then really think about using a wide vocabulary when speaking to your child. That's some other pretty interesting research I've seen, is that parents that are using wider vocabularies when speaking with their children end up having children who enter school with a wider vocabulary. So don't be afraid of the big words. Just know that you're going to be intentional or word aware when you're using those words, so children can learn the words and learn how to use them in context. Next, comprehension. So comprehension is understanding. So comprehension is that process readers use to understand what they have read. Comprehension really begins at birth. Understanding that bottle means I get to eat food, just really starting to put those pieces together to understand those inputs into a child's life. Comprehension includes predicting before reading and as they read. So what do you think is going to happen next in the story? What do you think the story is going to be about? Again, incorporating any of those who, what, why, where, when questions as open-ended questions to really prompt thinking and connections to what you're reading together. Also asking questions about what is being read and creating a mental picture of key parts of the story or information. One way that really fosters that mental picture could be you read the book last night at bedtime, and now we're driving somewhere in the car. Revisit that book. What happened in the book? And then Jimmy had a problem. What was Jimmy's problem? Can you tell me more about that? So really fostering those cognitive connections between the book that's being read and experiences. So there are several ways that families can foster comprehension. When the slide says read together for lots of purposes, what that means is it is fun to read a book for fiction. It's valuable in so many ways. We've talked about many of the bits of meaning that can come from that, but also read nonfiction books, read magazines, read signs, read brochures, read maps. Bringing lots of different ways to read into the world, again, fosters that comprehension and helps children understand that we have lots of ways to get information so that we can more effectively live our lives. Also, discuss and reflect on what you read together. Again, making those connections well after you've read a book is valuable. Share your responses to a book read together with your child, like, wow, I really liked this part when this happened, or what did you like? What was your favorite part of the book? Here was my favorite part of the book. Talk about other books or experiences that you are reminded of when reading aloud. This part of the story reminds me of, or retelling stories to each other after reading the book. Make stories part of playtime. Recreate art, play with it, recreate the story with dolls, do sand play or Play-Doh. What can that look like? So how can families support literacy learning? I gave lots of strategies when we were talking about the different components of literacy. So hopefully you've gotten either some ideas, or I'm confirming for you that you're doing so many of the amazing things that need to happen to foster early literacy development. We know that families play a key role in literacy success. From the moment children are born, they're developing literacy skills through relationships with caregivers. So by talking, singing, and playing with your child, you provide that foundation that your child needs to develop language and literacy skills. So for young children, here are a few additional ideas. For young children, nursery rhymes, I've talked about those. Nursery rhymes all day, every day. In fact, if that's a strategy that you're not really using, you can get some online. Just get some fun, easy nursery rhymes through a search, or get some fun nursery rhyme books from the library. They have a wide selection, and you may even kind of harken back to your early childhood days yourself, and maybe that's a connection. This used to be my favorite nursery rhyme. Now I'm teaching it to you. Label objects in your home. This can show the importance of and the connections between language, reading, and writing. Talking about everyday experiences. So one strategy I like that I've heard some parents use, rather than saying, how was your day, which usually you'll get fine, tell me about your day. What was the best part of the day and what was the most challenging part of the day? Or in the context of your day, tell me about one rose and one thorn and how you handled the thorn. Showing your child pictures and talking about them. I see, I think, I wonder. It's a strategy that's fun to use with kids, is just looking at artwork. No words, just artwork with the young children. And you're talking about what you see in the artwork. What do you think they're doing there? Why do you think they're doing that? What do you think that thing right there is called? And then telling stories. Children love to hear stories. And they love hearing stories of you growing up, things that happened in the neighborhood, your favorite stories. So they'll eat all of this up. And then for older children, You can play word games, so talk about word meanings and point out interesting or new words when reading together. That's something you can even kind of be selective about, is identifying some books that might not too many new words. I would say no more than 3 or 5 new words for a child in a book, but identifying books that might provide some opportunities to talk about word meanings and expand those meanings. Asking questions before, during, and after reading aloud. So what do you think this is going to be about? What do you see on the cover of the book? After reading aloud, making connections to the child's own life is really valuable. And then before reading, look at the book cover and talk about what might happen during the story. I just mentioned that. And then during reading, ask your child what questions they have. So is there anything that you wonder about this page? What do you think is happening? Or you ask questions. I see a dark starry night, but I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm really curious to know what's going to happen next. What do you think about that? And then after reading, ask your child to summarize and relate the story to what they already know or what they have experienced. So when we start talking about helping your child who may have any type of literacy challenge, we've got 3 common reading problems. One might be a decoding difficulty. So decoding difficulty might be trouble reading printed words accurately and smoothly. This means a child has trouble decoding or sounding out words. Your child may skip, guess, or mispronounce words consistently and most text while reading, or your child may have trouble learning sight words and poor spelling. Children with decoding issues have trouble identifying and using spoken sounds and words. So to read a printed word, a child must have accurate and quick letter sound knowledge and phonemic awareness. So students with decoding problems need explicit and systemic instruction to learn the alphabet, phonics, and phonemic awareness. And if the problem, and these might be things that you're going to see very early on, and if the problem is severe and continues despite increased support, it could be a sign of dyslexia. We also may have reading comprehension difficulties. So that might be a specific reading comprehension difficulty, meaning a child can read words accurately and smoothly, but fails to understand what was read. So they can read the word, but they don't know what they just read. This is sometimes called hyperlexia, and often this problem doesn't appear until the upper elementary grades. So this is not something you're going to see signs on until the upper grades. A child can appear to have a smooth start in reading since the primary grades heavily focus on decoding. However, once a child moves beyond the initial skills needed to read by like 3rd or 4th grade, you might start seeing a slump in their reading performance as instruction shifts from learning to read to reading to learn. So poor comprehension can be influenced by different factors such as lack of background knowledge, unfamiliar vocabulary, or inferential skills. So your child might have some difficulty answering questions or summarizing what was read. Talk to your child's teacher to see if your child's teacher has noticed this problem, and really have a conversation about your shared observation. So reading comprehension deficits are complex and may be caused by language comprehension issues. If you suspect your child has trouble with speaking or listening to language, talk to your school's speech language pathologist to see if an evaluation might be warranted. And then we may have mixed reading difficulty. And some people call this garden variety poor reading or mixed reading difficulty. This means a child has both reading and comprehension problems. This is the most common reading problem seen in schools, and I can vouch for that as a former teacher. It can be caused by a combination of many factors, such as limited home experiences with literacy, English language learning, or even a learning disability. Children with coding and language comprehension issues may have low motivation and confidence in reading and fall behind their peers. They have like 2 areas that they're not feeling successful. So we need to consider some strategies for this would be stay positive. It is a very common concern that we see. I'd say the most common that we see in early literacy. Staying positive and fostering a positive attitude toward reading is important. So create a comfortable and quiet reading environment by having a variety of books and materials that match your child's interest and level. And you can work with your child's school to identify that appropriate level. Make weekly library visits fun and enjoyable. So just bring all the fun into literacy that you can to mitigate some of these challenges. As much as you can, encourage daily reading. Praise your child's efforts and progress in a concrete way. You really struggled with that word, but you and I worked together and we figured it out, and you were able to tell me what that word meant to you. Like, really give that concrete encouragement. Encourage your child to talk to you about what they like or dislike about reading, and keep this all low pressure. Celebrate the achievements and try not to dwell too much on disappointment. Every child has unique strengths and weaknesses. It's no one's fault if a child has trouble learning to read. Seek help as soon as you can and be patient and supportive along the way. With the right guidance and encouragement, most children can learn how to read and enjoy it. And it's important for you to know, as a family member, you are not alone in this journey. There are many resources and people who can help you and your child overcome their reading problem and achieve their full potential. So that just kind of is an overview of some of the most common concerns. You will see, for this recording, I'm not playing videos, but you can see the video link, and for more information, if you go to Reading Rockets, they have so many resources for families if you haven't been there already. So Reading Rockets will have a lot of support even outside this specific link I have for you. And then you can see the video link in there. So hopefully you can pick up that link and watch this video on your own. Okay, let's talk about resources. I wanted to introduce some, I'd say, the most high leverage resources. This is by far not a comprehensive list at all. So here we have some resources for families through the Michigan Department of Education. So if you just go to the Michigan Department of Education and then search literacy, these materials will come up. So we've got reading material and read aloud. So ways to identify and support appropriate reading material for your children, and ways that you may be able to support high quality read aloud. So you may get some tips and tricks in here to kind of level up your experiences in identifying reading material and reading aloud for your children. And in addition, there's other resources just like this for families. These were just kind of the higher level ones that I wanted to introduce to you. If you go to the Michigan Department of Ed and look for tools for literacy, you should be able to have these resources as well as many others. Also, if you take a look, I mentioned Family Engagement for Literacy, Michigan Department of Education. The site is www.michigan.gov/MDE, which stands for the Michigan Department of Education. If you just type in their search, Family Engagement for Literacy, you will have your hands on everything. The Michigan Alliance for Families has a great resource called Is Your Child a Struggling Reader? I think it's a good resource to go back to. And then the Michigan Department of Education also has resources on the Read by Grade 3 law. If you have any questions about that, those are very helpful for families. I mentioned going to Reading Rockets, and also tips for supporting reading skills at home. Honestly, I think if you just type tips for supporting reading skills at home by the Institute for Education Sciences, that document's going to jump right up for you. So a few big ideas for today. Early literacy experiences at home are important for literacy success. So the biggest, most important thing you could do is talk, read, and or play with your child every day. So we have big concepts in literacy development. As a parent, knowing the big concepts in literacy development, it really helped me in fostering literacy success for my own kids. So considering ways that you as a family member are fostering oral language, phonological awareness, fluency, phonics, and comprehension are super valuable. And there are a lot of resources available to support you and your child through the literacy journey. I'd say the high leverage ones would be Reading Rockets, Michigan Department of Education. I think the more we learn, the more tools we have to support literacy learning. And I think it's great for families to have as many tools in their toolbox as they can. So I love this quote. On days when I felt as though I have nothing left to give to my kids, I have been able to sit down next to them and open a book. We start reading and the world looks different. So when I say the literacy journey should be fun for your kids, it should be fun for you too, and I hope it is. If you have any questions or you are having trouble finding any of the links or you want more information or I can connect you elsewhere, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can be contacted at nkelty@mimtss.org. And I appreciate your time today. You'll see some of the references for